Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Robert, and this is episode 2 of Bob's Town, and I'm gonna call it 2 Bob 2 Town. Um, I'm just trying to be funny, it's not really something that means anything, whatever. Um, and I'm gonna put my phone on silent because, yeah, I don't really want any more of that in the background. I'm sorry for that one. I'm gonna keep it in because I'm just rolling with it. So, yeah, welcome to Bob's Town. Last time we saw how he started this town and we saw some of the ideas that he came up with. And this time we see how he expands on some of the things and also improves some of the things that he wasn't quite satisfied with. For instance, there's this garbage um, disposal facility, I suppose is what you could call it. And what it does is it's supposed to take in garbage and then use the rails to ship it to like a neighboring town or whatever. I think the shipping part is more of a fantasy thing, but Bob thought that the intersection of the rails there looked a bit weird, so he decided to move it over by just a little bit, like this, and to change the way it connected to the roads a bit, because previous episode it would just stick to the side of the road, but as you can see there's this um, this bit of road incorporated into no, not really the building but the lot, the area that belongs to the building. And so we thought, well, it would be nice to use some street add-on mod streets there, because that would make it a bit more smooth. And then here he tried to fix this transition here, and he ended up finding a way to make it as smooth as possible. Um, yeah, there's still a bit weirdness, but whatever. And here he thought he was zoning high density industrial, but it was agricultural industrial, but he later on figured that out and fixed it. So it's not a big deal, but he looked at this rail line and he thought, wait, I want to make a passenger station over there, over to the left of here. So I'm gonna need to find a way to connect that passenger station. And yeah, at first he decided to make a second rail line because he thought it would, um, yeah, be functional. And then, yeah, he just decided to connect it all up. And um, yeah, he found this little double bend, and he thought it looked pretty cool because it reminded him of the good old days when he would, yeah, just stare at the little electric train sets that he saw in the toy folders, and he thought he wanted to mimic something like that. But yeah, later on he's just gonna delete that because despite it looking good, it wasn't right for that spot, because he's doing all this extra work because he wanted um, to make a passenger station there, and yeah, with that special piece, he wasn't able to make that extra connection. So here he's using some more rails to make a little bit of a smooth, yeah, I don't know if you call them intersections for rails. Hmm, yeah, I don't know what you call those. I guess I'll just call them intersections, whatever. Yeah, so here he's just looking at this and he's figuring out that you can't really connect to that point. And yeah, making another intersection nearby would make it look a bit crowded with intersections, I guess. It's already a bit crowded. Though, yeah, that might also be a look that you're going for, to make it look like it would be mainly, uh, yeah, it wouldn't be high throughput, but just functional in terms of connectability. But yeah, here he was figuring out something of a different trick, so he found this nice little cross intersection and decided to use that instead of the first plan. So he put it there and he just connected it all up. And why is he building this passenger station here? Well, we have a pretty large industrial area here, and he's planning on expanding that industrial area at least, like, yeah, he's gonna make it a couple times bigger. So in order to ensure that people can reach their jobs there, he thought it would be very smart to have some train connections to make sure that not everybody is um, needing to use the roads, which would cause a lot of congestion. And yeah, so he decided to use some of these rural stations. And yeah, he's just experimenting with it and looking what the different looks are. They all have different names, which indicate the way that they are gonna look. For instance, you can, if you stare at these platforms for a little bit, you can notice there's like 3 different types of platforms. There's 2 different types of like overhangs. There's the ones with the bridge that goes over, and there's the one with the double tunnel. But then the double tunnel ones also have one without uh, like a roof over the. I'm not good with English rail terms, but staging area, I guess, is what you might call it. So there's the one with the roof over the staging area and the one without. And he just relatively randomly picked this one. He just didn't think about it too much. But over here, he's gonna build another station. And yeah, he thought about it a little bit, and he thought it would be nice to have some variation. So he decided to look at his options again. And here, because Bob is not really very observant when he's building these projects, so at this point he hadn't noticed yet that the staging area had a different kind of overhang on one of those pieces. So here you can see him just plop it down, believing that it would look normal. And maybe that looks normal in a certain way. Maybe if it was a bit more flat, it would look better. But he decided to, yeah, to change it a little bit because, yeah, I think he could have just kept it, but he was being finicky, I guess. So he decided to remove the one with the roof over the staging area. I'm not sure if it's called a staging area. I guess it could be called hmm, a platform. Yeah, okay. So he decided to use the one with the big station building and without the roof over the platforms. So he then ended up making the road look a bit more uniform. And here he, because all of this work was because he was planning something. He was planning on expanding this residential area over here. And to expand a residential area, you have to ensure that they can find a place to work because people are unhappy when they can't find a nice job. Um, or, well, most people get unhappy by that. Of course, there's some people that already have a ton of money and just want to have fun in life, I guess. I don't know. But the people in this game like a good job. So he decided to use the platforms with the overhanging stuff this time. And yeah, you combine 2 pieces, one of which came with extra parking attached to it, and the other one didn't come with extra parking. So he decided to use the extra puzzle pieces that came with the set to give it some extra parking and to make it all look um, yeah, connected and like one big thing. And so that's the third station. So pretty quickly he managed to get three different stations built in his city. And this is because he has a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a mega plan, but it's definitely a pretty ambitious plan for this area that he's looking at. So as you can see, um, if you saw the last episode, you could have seen how he struggled getting a, a big area like that to develop, and yeah, we explored then how most of these struggles were caused by a couple of companies going bankrupt while constructing them, and he ended up finding one that didn't go bankrupt and that actually built a whole bunch of nice neighborhoods within like no time. And this time he's continuing on with that same firm. And yeah, you can see him already planning out a pretty big area for them to develop. And yeah, well, why is he planning all this residential? Um, well, the city must grow, I guess. Um, yeah, no, that's not really a good reason. The idea of all this residential over here is that um, Bob likes to make money, and people living in your city makes you a lot of money. And yeah, so he's just making sure that he keeps making more and more money. And well, he also wanted to see what it would look like if he made a larger area with those big buildings. Well, they're not really singular buildings, but those big groups of buildings. And he wanted to see if he could make a nice looking neighborhood like that. Um, Over here, he decided to give a bit of a decoration to the side of this street by giving them some benches. Maybe that's too many benches. Maybe it's not enough benches. It's the amount of benches that he gave them, and nobody complained. So I guess it was the right amount of benches. Um, yeah, and here you can see the construction firm starting in their work, and pretty quickly they developed the whole area, and he was very pleased with it. But he wasn't quite satisfied yet. He wanted more people in the city, and well, the main reason at this point for Bob to want more people is not really about the money. He already made all his money back that he spent in the first part of the video. So the main reason really is because he just wants to experiment with housing styles and with different road layouts. He just wants to see. Um, yeah, he wants to use his creativity to build a city that he finds interesting because um, recently he visited a couple of cities and he found that yeah, there was a certain lack of creativity in the way people designed their cities. A lot of cities really um, yeah, had some very predictable layouts and yeah, some unhealthy principles. So he decided to make sure that his city was better. Here he decided, well, uh, part of that new area that just developed was feeling unhappy and moved out. And Bob noticed that he forgot to give them schools, and people really like schools these days. So he decided to give them some schools and to give them some fire stations to keep safe, because it's pretty important to feel safe wherever you live. And having like no fire fighting near you would be a pretty scary thing, especially during the holidays when you would sometimes be in the mood to light a candle and to yeah, just maybe you have a fondue set that uses real flames instead of one of those electric ones. That would also be a bit of a fire hazard. And there's a lot of people with fireplaces that would also, um, well, the fireplace themselves tend to be very safe, but the chimneys actually can cause some issues that would require some intervention from the fire department. So he decided to make sure that these people could enjoy their holidays without having to worry about those things. And yeah, here he's just making some more areas for small homes because he likes to make a bit of a variation in his cities. He doesn't want just one style all over the place, but he does like it when a neighborhood like that has a certain feel to it, with the red roofs and some of the green roofs. They fit together pretty nicely. Bob's just doing what he likes to do best. He's just making more neighborhoods because, yeah. So his main reason is just because he likes to use his creativity to, um, well, he likes to share his creativity with the people that move in here and that might or might not enjoy the city that he builds. And also because he just loves this town. This whole area means a lot to him, and he just wants to share his love for this place with everybody. And here decided to create some area for the garbage because the new garbage disposal facility wasn't working quite well. So he had to give it a bit of help. And here he's just making more industry. Yeah, as you could see earlier, was that he planned a lot more of those big housing projects, but yeah, he was having some trouble finding enough people that wanted to live there. And when you do a project like that, you don't start building until you find at least a certain percentage of the available capacity filled, because you need a certain amount of people that actually buy the houses before you can finance the construction of such a place. And he was having trouble with that because people didn't want to live here since there wasn't enough jobs around. So he decided, okay, I have a solution for that. And he decided to give them a bunch more jobs. And at first he just built this little area like this. And then he thought this roundabout looks like it could be a pretty decorative area. And he decided to use some special park assets in order to make it look a bit more interesting. I think um, yeah, it looks quite nice. It has a whole bunch of different shapes all working together. Uh, there's a circle there. There's like a couple of squares, one of which you might call a diamond because it's angled. So yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. He did a pretty good job there. And there you could shortly see how the area grew. And here he decided to make a little bit of a connected flower garden area. And this type of flower gardening, when you connect them all together, it really reminds me of a park I went to in Paris. I don't know exactly what the name of the park was. It was a pretty famous park, so I guess the first guess in the comments will be the right one. But it also had a bunch of these paths. They weren't as um, yeah, there were longer paths, of course, and the whole park was a whole lot bigger than that. But I don't know, that kind of yeah, they did have like double paths, so like two paths running parallel to each other, and I think it's that aspect that reminds me of that place. And I might just be misremembering things because my memory sometimes I just forget things or I misremember things because the way your memory works is that every time you remember something, you you just overwrite that memory with the way you're remembering it. So sometimes you might remember things one way, and the next time you remember them, the memory is slightly changed. And yeah, it's just small things that change, I think. It's just the feeling of things and the small details of things. So, yeah, my memory does that too. So I don't trust my memory every always because I know it can be quite wrong. Now here, Bob started by building this big grid, and um, yeah, the idea of this is not something Bob came up all by himself, but he looked on YouTube and yeah, he found a pretty old video where somebody used this technique in a similar way. And the idea was you just start with a simple grid to give you something to start with, and then you just start deforming the grid until you found something, a set of shapes that you find interesting. So he started with a bit of a rectangular grid, and yeah, he just started adding some roundabouts and some cul-de-sac kind of things. And here he tried something and thought, let's just do it this way. And yeah, the idea of this is to make a nice little rural area. And I intentionally don't use the word suburb here because the word suburb has a bit, I think it's very closely connected to the American design of rural areas. And I think they tend to not look like this, though some areas over there look very similar to this. Um, yeah, at one point I went to New York for school. Not New York, Chicago. I mean, I don't know why I mixed that up. And yeah, over there we took a trip. I think it was Andrew Loyd Wright, who was like a designer in the early 1900s, and he used this style that's called Art Deco. And what that means, the name of Art Deco, it really just means that it's a design style that's quite centered around making a lot of small things look as decorative as is possible without them losing their function. So a lot more attention is put into like things like symmetry and patterns. And yeah, we visited the place where I think it was Andrew Loyd Wright, but yeah, I just talked about my memory, and I'm quite sure that it was Andrew Loyd Wright. But he had a pretty yeah, pretty big home over there. And we went to that home and we saw how he just over the years kept adding little things to it and just making these very interesting shapes in yeah, yeah, it was a pretty nice place. And we also visited a church that he had designed, which in part looked very impressive and in part felt, yeah, I don't know. I used to go to church when I was younger, and at some point I couldn't believe all that anymore. And I don't know, to some degree, I just don't like being remembered of that time. It's not like anything traumatic happened there. It's not like I was abused or whatever. Um, yeah, it's just that I feel fooled by it all, I guess. I feel like I was manipulated. Not maybe not intentionally, but I was led to believe things that I uh, now don't think I have a good reason to believe, and I was led to, yeah, center my life around something that wasn't helping me. So yeah, I still felt a bit sore about all that back then, and I had some double feelings about it because the design of the building was very impressive, and there was so many different aspects that were, yeah. The thing is, when you build a building, you can just put a bunch of blocks of concrete down and, yeah, maybe use some wood or whatever to make a roof, and you can call it a building. But what that guy did is just take the time and energy. Yeah, he just made time and energy to overthink everything. So every little aspect of such a building just had so much more shapes and so much more thought behind it. If you looked at it and you knew what you're looking at, then the window frames and all those kind of silly little details. But the thing is, um, if you think about it, when it's a church, at least when I was in church, I spent a lot of time just staring at whatever was around me because in church is not the most interesting thing to be, at least when you're growing up, I think. So it's good to have an inspiring place around you. And yeah, I think he did a very nice job on that church. I can't really clearly remember how it looked like. I would have to look it up. But I do remember some very impressive parts about his home as well, like his study had a sort of an I think it was an octagon, but it might have been 10 different angles. But it was one of those almost circular shapes, but still with straight edges. And there was like a balcony that was going around it, and yeah, the whole woodwork. It was all made of wood. That study, at least. The church was, I think, mostly made out of stone, but I'm actually not sure. But yeah, it already looked impressive when we walked up to it because we had to walk from the elevated rail station. I think it was. Hmm, I can't. I think we went by elevated rail. Yeah, so it was pretty close to Chicago because I can't imagine the elevated rail going on for too long, but I don't know really. It went for a long while. At least for Dutchtown, it would have been a couple of cities over. Um, yeah, so this neighborhood, especially with the colors of the trees, because we did go in the autumn, so all the trees had colors like this. And I remember walking down a path, being surrounded by all these colorful trees and the leaves around the path, and the very impressive homes everywhere because it was a very fancy neighborhood. and most of it was designed by Andrew Loyd Wright, I believe. So yeah, pretty much most of the homes there had a whole lot of interesting aspects to them. And here I'm just showing the different seasons of this area. I do like the fall the most, and that's mainly just because I like the colors. So, and yeah, when you're designing an area like that, um, um, yeah, you tend to, at least that's what Bob told me. So when you're designing an area like that, Bob told me, when you're planting the trees, you tend to plant them in autumn. In real life, I guess you wouldn't, but let's imagine you would. um, so you design them around, because Bob is a pretty visual person. When he sees something, he works with what he can see. So because they look um, like autumn when you plant them, he tends to design the look for the area around what it looks like in the autumn. So in the winter and the summer, an area might look a bit weird or a bit different, but I think it's fine. Maybe the winter trees are a bit. Hmm, yeah, the winter trees would look better if there was like a snow ground. But yeah, you have to work with what we have here. So here, Bob expanded on the industrial area a little bit more because he noticed when looking at some of his reports that there was still a big demand for industries and jobs. So yeah, he decided to give them some parks to motivate some nicer industries moving in. And as you can see here, you might not know this because maybe you haven't played the game, but these buildings around in this little triangle, they're mainly high-tech industry, and high-tech industry tends to give more wealthy people jobs, people who had a bit more education, and so that's what he ended up doing. And in the end, um, yeah, this area with the big squares, they had some trouble, similar to last time, because even though Bob was very happy with that one firm that built all those things in no time, he felt like he might might save some money. So a friend of him recommended like his nephew. He had a company that did these things, and in the end, that nephew ended up. Um, he didn't go bankrupt, but he just. Not everybody goes bankrupt. No, he didn't go bankrupt. He just couldn't manage it, and he ended up admitting his mistakes just in time, so that Bob was able to go back to the other firm who was by then done with the old project and had plenty of time to help him fix the problems there. And there was one square that was still finding some trouble. Um, yeah, finding, yeah, it ended up developing anyways. So here's some closing shots of the city as it is now. The Yeah, it's a bit of a sunrise going on, which, which I'm gonna speed up later. So I'm gonna skip a bit now. And here, yeah, the area near Bob's house really changed in the architectural style. A lot more fancy homes got built there because the people started to making more and more money due to more office jobs being available and more high-tech industry jobs being available. And here you can see the Andrew Loyd Wright inspired area. I'm pretty sure it's Andrew Loyd Wright, and if it's not, I guess I might put some text on the screen to yeah, I would have to put that on the screen every time I say Andrew Loyd Wright. But I'll put some text on the screen if it's not right. And if there's no text, then yeah, it was Andrew Loyd Wright. I think it was. So these types of houses are very, yeah, they look like they would fit on a farm, I think, but I think they are part of the Simpac agricultural add-on mod, and they're not of like a part of like the base part of it that would change the way farms work. But there's a lot of add-ons that I also downloaded, and some of the add-ons were more for residential replacers, so that you wouldn't be staring at the old Maxis homes all the time. And here you can see some of the fancier homes by night, some of the big blocks. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.